Hi, welcome back to Christus of Ministry for our series, Crafting a Personal Witness Talk, a guide for Catholic teens. My name is Xander, and thanks for joining us today. This series is broken down into 3 stages, that is preparation, delivery, and reflection. And today we break into talking about the delivery of a talk. And we're going to do so by exploring some public speaking lessons through the example of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. So, let's get ready. You're sitting there wondering, well, who's Fulton Sheen? Well, he was an American bishop in the 1950s, and prior to that, he taught here at the Catholic University of America. But right after being ordained bishop in 1951, he was the host of a TV series called Life is Worth Living. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. You can find clips on YouTube. It's absolutely wonderful. But also, he was the author of many great books, such as 3 to Get Married, Life of Christ, and Treasure in Clay, his autobiography. And behind me, I have God Love You, which is a collection of his works. I really like it. So we're going to be looking at Fulton Sheen as our example for public speaking today. Let's get into it. So lesson number 1 is that preparation and practice matter. Have you ever been to a lecture where the person giving the lecture was not really prepared, and they didn't seem to even know what was going on, and you surely didn't know what was going on? I think we've all been there. And we don't want to do this whenever we're giving a personal witness talk, because what we say matters. And so putting practice into it and putting preparation into it matters, because it shows how much we care. Here's what Fulton Sheen has to say.
So with this series, there will be no manuscripts, there will be no copies. Hence, please do not ask for any. Because I always loved that old Irish woman who, when she saw a bishop reading a speech, said, "Glory be to God, if he can't remember it, how does he expect us to?"
So quite simply, know what you're going to say. Now, you don't have to memorize the material, but I think it's really helpful to have a really good outline. So be sure to go and check out our video on preparing and outlining, so you can see what type of things to consider when writing a talk, and then an effective way to outline the talk. And this is important because people don't want to hear an academic paper. They want to hear a story. But then also with that, just keep track of time, because, well, Fulton Sheen says, well, just watch.
And one must not be too long. It's always better to have an audience say, "I wished he talked longer," than to have them say, "He had 3 good chances to quit."
So I've talked a lot about mental preparations to have, but on the practical, physical side of things, show up early and be familiar with the space that you'll be speaking in. So know okay, where might you walk around? Are you going to be using a microphone? Have you used the microphone before? If not, practice. That might sound weird, but trust me, if you're talking with your hands, before you know it, the mic's going to be away from your mouth, and they won't be able to hear you. So practice holding a microphone steady. And so all of what I just said falls under the realm of preparation and practice. But really everything that's going to be said in this video, practice, 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 because that's just going to slowly build the habit of speaking to where you won't really have to think about these things so much at first, as you do at first, but then they'll slowly just start to come naturally. So next, I think it's important to talk about passion. People can tell what's fake. So be authentic, but be authentically passionate, right? Because if we're not passionate about what we're speaking about, how do you expect the audience to be passionate about it? And with preaching, there's this unique pouring out of the heart to where we're just conveying what the Lord has done for us. We're being vulnerable with the audience, and that's really important. So we have to really be passionate about that. Here's what Fulton Sheen has to say.
This is about the only suggestion that I would give for delivery. One just simply feels what's in his heart, that's all. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh.
Next, I want to talk about tonality and rhetoric. Have you ever been to a lecture where the person lecturing or giving the talk had a really monotone voice the whole time, and they sounded like this, and every time they tell a joke, it just sounded like this? Okay, yes, I think we all have, and it's really boring. We don't want our personal witness talks to be like that. So I think it's important to pay attention to what is the tonality that I'm using? Is my voice louder at certain times? Is it quieter at certain times? Am I talking really, really fast, or am I talking a little slower? And just being conscious of all of these things at first and using them at the right times to go along with what you're trying to convey. Let's look at this example from Fulton Sheen.
When our blessed Lord came to this earth, he had the divine sense of humor. There was nothing in this world that he ever took seriously except the salvation of the soul. That is why he said, "What doth it profit man if he gain the universe and lose his soul?"
So, given what was previously said about tonality, did you notice anything? Well, did you notice that whenever he got more serious, he started getting quieter and slowed down just a little more, added pauses. This is really interesting because I did this exercise with a group of freshmen, and as I slowly started talking quieter and slower and adding longer pauses, like you can almost see them like leaning in on their chair, because this is like just naturally how our brains respond whenever people talk softer or quieter. So the dynamic of our voice and the pace at which we talk have impact on what so like we should really correlate that with the like emotion that we're trying to convey given within our talk. But also notice the pauses. Fulton Sheen doesn't go well, yeah, just pause. That's something that some of the like really good speakers do. They recognize that if they're really looking for the next word, they don't need to fill the gap with noise. And actually, to us, it seems like that we're pausing a lot longer than we really are. So keep that in mind. But then also just remember to breathe. Like whenever we're speaking, I think, I do this all the time, I talk really, really fast and I just keep going and going and going. But you just got to take a second to breathe and just pace it all out really well. Really practical tip with this, record yourself talking. That way you can really pick up on how you sound, and then you can kind of experiment with it, change it. Also, like kind of keep this tonality thing in the back of your mind for everyday conversations, and you can practice it there, and then slowly over time, like we've been saying, you'll build the habit of just having good tonality and rhetoric with your talks. So next lesson is all about nonverbal communication and body language. What we say and our body language should go together. Like go on YouTube and watch some of your favorite Catholic speakers, and you'll notice this. Now, everyone's different, so everyone has their own preferences and that, but some stand at a podium and some walk around the room and talk with their hands in that. But the really good speakers, nonetheless, are intentional with their body language. So some speakers just prefer to stand at a podium, but they're intentional with how they still move their hands. They're intentional with how they look around the room. And the speakers that do walk around the room, they don't walk around aimlessly, they don't wave their hands around aimlessly, but they're intentional about all of it, because all of it should be in context to what they're saying. Same with Fulton Sheen. I think Fulton Sheen is kind of a dramatic example because Fulton Sheen, he uses his hands a lot, he's waving them around, and he's very dramatic with his voice as well, but that's just him. As we talked about earlier, like be passionate, but be authentically passionate, but the same goes for our body language. Like don't try to be over the top. So if you're someone that talks with your hands a lot, I tend to be, that's fine, talk with your hands, but be intentional with how you do it. You don't want to go over the top. But then if you're someone who you don't really know anything about it, like now's your chance. We're going to dive a little deeper into what it means to be intentional with your body language. But before this, I want to share with you this clip from Fulton Sheen.
I was talking in upstate New York on one occasion, and I went into the barber shop in the afternoon of the lecture. The barber did not recognize me. He said, "Are you going to that lecture tonight by Bishop Sheen?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you have a ticket?" I said, "No, I don't." Well, he said, "All the tickets have been sold. You probably will have to stand." I said, "You know, it's a peculiar thing that every time I go to hear that man talk, I always have to stand."
Right, so I think it's important to stand whenever you're giving a talk, maybe move around a little bit. It kind of just keeps the audience engaged. But at first, if you prefer not standing, it's totally fine to sit. But if you are sitting, like don't sit and read a page, right? Like sit on a chair, like a high top chair, but actually like look around the room at the audience. But also leads us to number 2 is be intentional with your facial expressions, because facial expressions really aid in telling the story. And because facial expressions are also linked with our tonality. So really kind of be aware of that. I told this to one of my friends, and so he like actually stood in front of the mirror and like paid attention to his facial expressions for a while on like how he was telling stories, and I really noticed like he got a lot better at it. And whenever you do this, the audience just connects a lot more with what you're saying. And that's because like psychologically, we're mimetic creatures. So like what we see, we imitate. And so if we like see someone like really passionate about it, and we see someone just like being dynamic, that like draws us into what they're saying. So last lesson on public speaking is to not take yourself so seriously and have fun, right? If you're a funny person, like crack a joke, like bring that aspect of your personality into the talk. Fulton Sheen was really witty, and he did this all the time. Like, just check this out.
And apropos of big words, I was once giving a talk in the town hall of Philadelphia, and I lost my way. And I asked a boy, "Where is the town hall?" And he told me, I do not remember the exact address, but something like 12th and Chestnut. And he said, "What are you going to do there?" I said, "Give a talk." "On what?" Well, I didn't want to tell him that I was talking on my usual subject, which will be my subject this afternoon, the accipito frontalis of the convolutic convolutions of the metaphorical obliquarum pelviarum. So I simplified it, and I said, "Well, boys, I'm going to talk on heaven and how to get there. Would you like to come and find out?" They said, "You don't even know the way to the town hall."
St. John Chrysostom said that laughter has been implanted in the soul, that the soul may be refreshed. So don't be afraid to make a joke, and also don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. We all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. And so actually calling out your mistake and kind of laughing at it kind of eases the tension of the crowd. Here's what Fulton Sheen has to say about it.
So if I make a mistake in talking, fine. That's good. They say, I could do it just as well as that. There's a spontaneity. That's what people like. Even the mistakes you make. Now, one of the reasons, for example, why people like to have me draw is because everybody in the audience can draw better than I can. They feel they're far superior, and rightly so.
Well, here is light. That's the sun. I'll put it down here so you'll know. Sun. Man.
We are to some extent like a man on a teeter-totter. Long time since I've drawn a man for you, and I've not improved one bit in 4 years.
Chip.
You laugh at me before I get started. I know it's that bad, but I can't help it.
So that wraps up today's video on public speaking through the example of Fulton Sheen. I hope these 5 lessons have been formative for you. All the video clips today were taken from Vision Video, so go and look at their clips. They have tons of episodes of Life is Worth Living, so go watch those. They're really good. Fulton Sheen is hilarious, but he's also just super smart and conveys just, yeah, go watch it. So be sure to tune in for our upcoming videos as we talk more on what it means to craft a personal witness talk. So be sure to comment, like, subscribe, all of that. Go follow the Instagram, stay updated, and we'll see you next time.